Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more overly sarcastic productions, and this time we're on to their newest episode in Fables and Folktales, Tokoyo and the Sea Monster. I probably pronounced that incorrectly, but we'll find out because I'm sure Red will probably pronounce it correctly. Before we dive in, though, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love if you join the Discord and follow me over at Twitch. All right. Let's go ahead and look at a Japanese fable/tale.
Japan is a beautiful country I'd love to visit someday, and that's a pretty popular sentiment out here in the West. Obviously, the global tourist appeal of an entire nation is a very complex and multifaceted affair that can't be boiled down to a single simple factor driving traffic. But
That was a lot of smart words. 10 seconds. I'm overwhelmed.
It's definitely anime, right? I mean, come on, at least mostly. I know correlation doesn't imply causation, but we all know an anime fan who was like, oh, I'd love to visit Japan. I've watched so much JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And I feel like that's reasonable, honestly. If you're passionate about a story, it makes sense to develop a curiosity about where that story comes from. One of the most efficient methods of cultural exchange is storytelling. It provides a window into a foreign cultural experience, and that potentially sparks increased interest in the culture from people who might otherwise never deal with it. Of course, hearing stories from a culture is not the same thing as understanding that culture, but if the stories trigger an initial interest, it can still lead to a broader, more immersive learning experience. And the process also happens in reverse. Learning about a place and culture can make you curious about its stories and folktales. One of the favorite pastimes of historical globetrotters has been going somewhere new and then documenting as many local stories as they can get their hands on. History, folktales, mythologized combinations of the two. The fact is, people like stories, and good stories make people want to know more.
It's almost as if, our oldest tradition is oral telling of stories, of our histories. Story is in the word history.
Back at the turn of the 1900s, British dude Richard
English gentleman who left his wife of 18 years to tour the East, which means he would probably be really impressed with modern advancements in body pillow technology. Indubitably.
Gordon Smith demonstrated my point handily by spending most of his later life traveling as far east as he could manage, which, considering the alternative was living in England, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I too would literally probably want to live anywhere else. That's a lie. England has cool castles. Actually, I'd probably just go to Wales or Scotland. Fuck England.
He ended up settling in Japan for a good chunk of his later years, but along the way he kept extensive journals of his travels and later collected some of the stories he'd heard into an anthology of folktales called Ancient Tales and Folklore of Japan, which is where we find the story we'll be talking about today. Unfortunately, this is the only place we can find this specific story, and while it seems pretty unlikely that Smith fully made it up, it isn't specifically corroborated anywhere else I can find. So, with the understanding that a British tourist isn't going to have the most accurate and culturally nuanced understanding of this tale, let's get into it. So our story begins with
I don't know what you were expecting, being a father in a story like this one. I wasn't expecting to be the inciting incident.
With Hojo Takatoki, last regent of the Kamakura shogunate, exiling a samurai named Oribeshima to the faraway Oki Islands for an unspecified crime. This banishment unsurprisingly separates Oribeshima from his daughter Tokoyo, who is none too pleased at this new arrangement and resolves to get him back no matter what. She sells her belongings, heads to port, tries and fails to charter a boat, and then just takes one instead. She manages to get to the Oki Islands, but
missing Dad. 30 or 40 years old.
Has no luck finding her father. Nobody knows where he is, and even if they did, he's been exiled, and that means helping him out is a no-no in general. Tokoyo runs herself pretty ragged trying to find any sign of her dad's whereabouts, and eventually she's pretty solidly worn out. One night she fires off a quick prayer at a shrine and lies down to sleep, but wakes up soon after to find a praying priest and a crying
I know.
little girl at the water's edge, which is never a good combination. The priest goes to push the girl in, but Tokoyo rushes in to save her, and the priest very quickly explains
There's a really good reason. I swear.
Himself. See, there's a sea monster down there who demands that they sacrifice a girl once a year, or he'll batter the island with terrible storms. Tokoyo is about fed up
Hold this. What? The silk is too nice to ruin.
with her current situation and decides she's got nothing left to lose, so she may as well kill the sea monster, right? You know, when you got a free afternoon. She gives the priest a letter to give to her father, sticks a knife between her teeth, and dives in. She swims to the bottom of the sea without too much difficulty, apparently thanks to her early years pearl diving with the locals in her hometown, and finds a luminous cave with a dude in it. But here's a twist. The dude is not, as she initially believes, the sea monster. On closer inspection, it's actually a wooden statue of Hojo Takatoki himself, the man who exiled her father. She initially considers taking out some well-deserved pent-up aggression on it, but decides to rescue it instead and lugs it out of the cave. But that's when the sea monster shows up. Weighed down by a statue and, lest we forget, at the bottom of the ocean, Tokoyo looks like pretty easy prey. And that is the sea monster's first and last mistake, as Tokoyo nails it right in the eye and follows up by stabbing it in the heart. Unsurprisingly, it dies. Tokoyo drags the statue and the corpse of the sea monster to the surface and is hailed as a hero by
How fucking strong is she? Holy
the
shit.
locals, presumably after first ruling out the possibilities that she's some kind of physical god or gumption-powered anime protagonist. Word of her bravery
Fucking built different. A statue of me? How is that what you chose to focus on?
and sick gains makes its way all the way back to Hojo Takatoki himself, who happens to have recovered from a lasting illness at the exact moment Tokoyo pulled his statue out of the water. So the obvious
Rescuing that statue warrants a boon, I'd say. And saving the Oki Islands? I never liked those islands.
conclusion is that the statue was in some way cursing him, and Tokoyo accidentally saved him from a slow and painful death. In gratitude, he immediately orders her father to be released from prison and exile, and Tokoyo is finally reunited with her dad. They return
Yay.
home, safe and secure in the knowledge that Tokoyo is a stone-cold, monster-slaying badass with lungs of titanium. It's not directly stated in story, but we can infer that Beowulf is off in the corner furiously taking notes. Up where the mountains
You saved the regent from a curse and killed a sea monster. What? Like it's
meet
hard.
the heavens above.
This isn't even Tokoyo's final form. The
Out
real
where the
historical Hojo Takatoki never even made it to age 30, so I don't know why all the existing art of him shows a balding elderly man.
lightning
You know, maybe he just had a rough 20s.
splits the sea.
Must have been a heck of a curse, I guess, yeah. And that was Fables and Folktales, Tokoyo and the Sea Monster. This was pretty good. Short, sweet, to the point. I love the addition there at the beginning, like what Red does when she's talking about stuff like this, where sources are dubious. And she just talks about like, yeah, no, this was written by a white dude from Britain that decided to live in Japan for the last parts of his life. And the Japanese didn't write the story down themselves. So that one's hard. This one's hard because Japan was usually, I would say, pretty good about Japan's one of the places that kept art and writings of their folktales, much like the Chinese. You know, so it's kind of interesting that this one wasn't written down until a British man decided to write it down. So yeah, it's a bit. Yeah, so this one I'd be a bit apprehensive in believing if it's a truly old folktale of Japan or not, just because of that. Just knowing how the Japanese usually kept pretty good records on their histories and their stories and stuff like that. But that was the Fables and Folktales. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.